Order. The question now is that this bill be now read a second time. I call the honourable member for Lyne.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker.
I'd rather.
I rise to speak on the Paid Parental Leave Amendment Bill, which is an administrative bill not related to the proposed policy that the Coalition has been referred to in the previous member's speech. But this is about removes the mandatory requirement of employers to administer the government-funded paid parental leave. From July 1, the Department of Human Services will pay eligible employees directly unless an employer indicates they wish to opt in and the employee wishes for them to pay the paid parental leave. This is a policy that we took in the lead-up to the 2013 election to make a number of changes to the existing paid parental scheme in order to lift the cost burden on employers, particularly small businesses. And these savings in compliance cost on cost to Australian businesses up to $48 million annually. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, the government made a commitment to the Australian people that we would cut red tape and continue to implement measures which alleviate the various burdens placed on our small business sector. So if we're going to grow and strengthen our economy, we have to reduce the compliance costs. It's self-evident, Mr Deputy Speaker. And complex red tape costs hours and costs money for businesses off their bottom line. So if we want to let small businesses grow, the best thing we can do for them is reduce all their costs. Now, there's been a significant impact with the number of small businesses in the electorate of Lyne that have been forced to close. In a regional area, the majority, in fact the vast majority, of our employers are small to medium enterprises. We have a few government enterprises that employ hundreds of people and one or two large health contractors that employ many people and one or two businesses in the manufacturing industry that have upwards of 150 employees, but the vast majority are all small businessmen and women with small numbers of employees. So costs of compliance and costs of red tape really affects their bottom line. And that's precisely what happened under the previous government. The current scheme that pays $662 a week for 40 days is foisted upon the employer to administer, and that's what this legislation is addressing, not the issues that the former member for Fairfax was referring to. Now, if we achieve what the previous coalition government achieved with encouragement of small business, we should get our economic activity in the small business space up and bring the unemployment rate down, which currently in my electorate is close to 6% and in the youth unemployment space is double that. Now, if you're a small business and your compliance costs are over $1,000, that could be employing new young employees. The suite of measures that make up our paid parental leave will help reduce compliance costs, particularly on these businesses. And it will allow them a lot more flexibility. We spoke about taking over the role of being the paymaster in the 2013 election and the 2010 election, and this amendment is just keeping faith with that. Now, the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, they've supported these measures. The CEO, John Osborne, has highlighted the increased cost burden that was placed on small businesses, and I just quote some of his statements. Small business should not be forced to be the unpaid paid clerks for government schemes. This responsibility should be funded and administered by government. And then he went on to say, the Abbott government is trying to do the right thing by small business in cutting red tape, and the opposition should support this. Now, the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry actually took the time to survey their members, and of the 1,700 businesses that participated in the survey, Mr Deputy Speaker, 84.5% either agreed or strongly agreed that the government should not require employers to be the paymaster for the paid parental leave scheme. Similar support has come from other peak bodies, including the Australian Industry Group, the Pharmacy Guild of Australia, the Australian Mines and Metals Association during the 2010 Productivity Commission inquiry into paid parental leave. They came out quite strongly. Now, to put things in perspective, in these surveys, the Australian Chamber did a different survey of small businesses and medium and large businesses. In fact, 501 of them responded to the survey, and 71% of them recorded additional costs as a result of running this scheme. 25% of them said at least 1 to 2 hours per month. 24% of them said from 3 to 5 hours per month. 22%, 15 hours or more. And the costs as a result of that are up to $250 for some employers, from $250 to $1,000 for 21% of the employers, and for some of the larger employers with a large scheme to administer, with many people with varying situations, over $1,000. And that was up to 20% of employers face these real costs. So, Mr Deputy Speaker, the introduction of the Paid Parental Leave Amendment Bill 2014 honours our commitments to the Australian people to simplify things and let the government administer a government scheme. It's smart, it's sensible, it's important legislation that will reduce compliance costs. And if there are employers that want to still administer it, by agreement they can. But for the most people don't want to have the hassle of yet another scheme or another compliance burden on their business. It's part of our commitment to reducing red tape, and I commend this bill to the House.
Order. The question is that this